What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Triple H podcast, Happy Hour Hoops, your one-stop shop for enjoying a cold beverage and listening to our ice-cold basketball takes. Got you covered on everything NBA all the time, and that is exactly what we're going to be talking about tonight. Kind of scattered all across the league here. We are going to be diving into some of the Indiana Pacers news that came out today, possibly a rebuild for the Indiana Pacers, who never have seemed to do that in the past. But, maybe they're shaking up their roster a little bit. Some guys on the trading block, apparently. Also, all this Dame Lillard drama that has come out recently. Dame's future with the team, coaching problems, maybe problems with some teammates. Who knows? Woj put out an article today that me and Jake will dive into. And then, of course, we will be previewing the Celtics and Lakers tonight for December 7th, the second matchup of the season. LeBron should be in the lineup for the Lakers, should be a good one. And yeah, let's get into it here. Jake, how we feeling?
We're good, man. It's been a kind of crazy NBA day. Like as we were getting ready for the pod this morning, like, what do we throw together? Like we got Lakers Celtics tonight. We can kind of check in on them. And then Woj drops a bomb article on us from with what apparently is the Neil O'Shea side of this Dame and Portland situation with O'Shea getting fired on Friday. And then Shams also dropping his own bomb talking about the Pacers rebuild. So I guess let's start there with the Pacers. I mean, the Pacers this year have been, a middling, I would say at best, Eastern Conference team. Was there high hopes for them this year? I think there was probably some positive energy around the Pacers just because of the signing of Rick Carlisle. He's a coach with really good pedigree. It went as bad as it could with Nate Bjorgen last year. I mean, those players, we touched on it on this podcast. They basically turned on him and just were like done with the guy. So there was hopes that they could kind of turn around, but right now they're 10-16. They're 7.5 games behind the Nets in first place. They're 3.5 games behind just Atlanta, even for the 10th place in the play-in spot. So it's going downhill. So Shams reported today that the organization is looking towards a rebuild. Typically, ownership in Indiana has not wanted to rebuild. They want to stay competitive, even if it means 7, 8, 6 seed, whatever. Get to the playoffs, get that playoff revenue, because they don't have a lot of great attendance. They're 29th in the league in attendance. It's a smaller market in Indianapolis, obviously. But apparently they are more receptive to it with the way this team looks. The core of Miles Turner's been in every trade rumor for like the last 3 summers. He's been traded to the Celtics at least the last 2 summers, like 5 different times.
Tell me about it, man.
So he's on the block. I mean, Sabonis has been having a really weird year with Rick Carlisle. Apparently he's on the block. Levert, who had obviously ended up there and had his heart issue and everything that he had to get sorted out. I mean, the trade to Indiana like damn near saved his life because they found out that issue, but hasn't turned out on the basketball court like they thought it. So with the Pacers looking to rebuild, Donnie, what is the first step? Like, what can they do for a rebuild? Like, do they kind of have to tear this whole thing down? Like, I don't think they want to tank, but they kind of have to be pretty bad. I mean, they're already pretty bad, I guess, but like, what kind of value do these guys have? What do you think the first steps in the Pacers rebuild would be?
Yeah, so I feel like, at least to me off the bat, those 3 names that were mentioned, Turner, Sabonis, and Levert, I'm kind of surprised, and maybe it is just, what they've seen this year and just not liking it. As you mentioned, they're kind of a middle of the pack team. So the Pacers are probably realizing they're in those dark areas of being a middle of the pack team in the NBA, which means no high draft pick and it means no playoff. No future for playoffs, at least for this season. It looks that way right now. So I think that's probably why they look to blow this up. But for me, I think if you're going to, try to rebuild and do anything with the group they have now or the 3 players they're, saying are supposedly on the block, I think you at least have to trade two out of the three of them, if not all of them, if you're planning a rebuild, because I don't think you're looking that much different unless you can flip Sabonis or Turner for significantly more than I think that they could. I don't think it's really going to change all that much, at least from a rebuild standpoint. If that's actually something they're trying to do, I think all three of these players need to be on the move and actually commit to the rebuild because, as you mentioned, right now they're a middle of the pack team. I think if they make, a low level move or only move one of these guys that they're talking about, I just don't see much that changes. But what I will say from other teams looking in, I think if you see this news and you're a contender, I think you should be knocking at the door, doing anything you can to get a guy like Miles Turner or Domantas Sabonis, because I think they're, both 25 years old, still really young, which again is kind of weird to me why those guys are on the block when they're trying to do a rebuild because they're pretty young, for their respective positions.
Yeah.
But like I said, yeah, I think if I'm a contender, I am definitely hitting up the Indiana Pacers, trying, especially a guy like Turner, where he can be so dominant on both ends of the floor any given night. But a little confusing to me overall. And yeah, I mean, I see a contender going after one of these two big guys.
Yeah, what contender wouldn't want Sabonis? Like a dude who was an all-star last year, is probably a perennial all-star most years. I think the biggest thing I'm taking away from this is Rick Carlisle is a grading dude. Like it was kind of incredible that he lasted as long in Dallas just because he's notoriously hard on players, wants his system to get across. I think that's where the disconnect with Luka kind of started, and we've seen those issues with Luka's surface, even with Jason Kidd, complaining for calls and such like that. Kidd mentioned that. But without that being said, it's still Carlisle. I think this is as much of a Carlisle thing as anything else. He's obviously got a big voice in this organization right now in the style that he wants to play. I mean, Sabonis has not looked good. He's not getting utilized the way you would think he would want to, and that's got to be on the coach, not putting him in those positions. So I have a feeling that that's what this really stems from, is that these guys, especially Sabonis and Turner, have been so accustomed to playing a certain way their whole career. And, they are, what did you say, 27, 28? That's around the range they are.
I think they're both 25.
Oh, both 25. I mean, even
Karis
crazier.
LeVert's 27.
Yeah. And LeVert with his injury history and health injury, everything, he hasn't been able to stay on the court a lot of times, and that's something Carlisle has notoriously also had issues with too, with players that aren't available all the time. So I think that it's as much just Turner and Sabonis are, they know what they do well. They know how they feel they know how to, best accentuate their talents. And Carlisle has another opinion, and especially with big guys, like we saw him. It was weird with Porzingis there for a couple of years, the way that and then Porzingis kind of looks like he's getting used a lot more the way that he should be used this year with Jason Kidd than he was with Carlisle too. So I just think that it's something he, like, philosophically, that he wants these guys to do differently, that they are not doing. Either they're not doing willingly or just it's just not their game. And this organization is like, well, if we want to build around this coach, we can't build around these two big guys too when they're literally playing like 70% of their potential or something in that style. So it's picking the coach over the players, which, you don't see that a lot in the NBA at all. But I also don't think that Sabonis and Turner are guys that are like, untouchable. I mean, Sabonis might be close to that, but
I mean, they've made it clear that
well,
Turner's not untouchable, dude.
Miles Turner is the least untouchable guy,
and he probably wants out of there at this point too. Like the amount, like you said off the top, the amount of times this guy's been in trade talks over the last 3 years, and like we just said, he's 25 years old. Like, talk about not really giving a guy a chance. I mean, if I'm Turner, I want out of there anyway, dude. Like I'm raising my hand if I'm Miles Turner, just offering myself up to be put on the trade block.
But he got one more. Next year is his last year of the deal too, and then he's a free agent after. So he's an expiring contract next year. So I mean, now is the time. They're not going to want to pay him after this year too. So you would think before he's an expiring would be the best time to trade him. I mean, where do you have any any locations or destinations you think either of these two guys, like just off the top of your head? I don't think we talked about this beforehand or anything, but I was. It's hard to try to find a spot that's like like a rebuilding trade. Like they're not going to get a lot of assets for these guys, I don't think. But what popped into your head when you heard about these trade rumors?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like first, I tried to think what are they looking for in return? I would assume it's more so draft picks than players, just because we mentioned again these guys are both semi young, so I don't really know what they're looking for as far as players go in return. But aside from trying to figure out the logistics of it, I'll give you a destination for each player that I think would be perfect for both the team acquiring them, and then for the player themselves. Sabonis, I think, would be unbelievable on the Milwaukee Bucks. I think his style and just the way that offense operates right now with a lot of inside out, the three-point shooting is fantastic. You have Giannis filling up the lane. I mean, if you can add a guy like Sabonis who's unbelievable on the block, fantastic footwork, a great team player to that already existing great team. And the only reason I say that, I think they could use a big, Brook Lopez going down. They brought in DeMarcus Cousins. I don't think Cousins is a long-term, situation for them. So I think you bring a guy like Sabonis into that. And again, it would be tough because we know the Milwaukee Bucks kind of gave up a lot of draft picks, don't really have too much wiggle room. So I'm not sure what that looks like, but that's just what came to mind. And then Miles Turner, I think, would be great on the Los Angeles Clippers. I think they love what Ibaka brings them. I think they're content with Zubac, but a guy like Miles Turner, I mean, he's pretty much like what Harrell gave them last year, except bigger and more talented on both ends, if you ask me. So, I think he would fit in perfectly to like that toughness, defensive identity. He can stretch the floor. I mean, he blocks about any shot that he pleases. I think he would just fit in great with, that Terrence Mann, Paul George, Reggie Jackson group. And then obviously, when Kawhi comes back. But that was just off the top of my head as far as, best fits I think I could see for both these bigs.
It's weird, and we put this in our notes here before too about them rebuilding everything. Is they're planning on keeping Duarte and Brogdon, so they want to keep the guards around. And Rick Carlisle does love his guard heavy offenses and everything, but Chris Duarte is a rookie. He's 24 years old. I mean, like this is like you're talking about your rebuild, but you're also rebuilding around two guys that are similar age, similar price range. It's just that he wants the guards. I think I don't think Carlisle wants to deal with all these bigs.
Yeah, Brogdon's 28, but he's part of the rebuild apparently. I get it. I mean, I love Malcolm Brogdon. I wouldn't want to get rid of him either, but I feel like the players they're putting up and the players they're keeping aren't really matching with this rebuild term that they're throwing around.
Well, a place that we could be looking at is, depending on what this next team is going to do, the Portland Trailblazers. So there's been some drama. So let's lay it all out here. Neil O'Shea is out as the GM in Portland. He got fired on Friday. We know that they had allegations of just workplace misconduct, of just apparently a terrible culture that he had put together for the last 10 years. He was kind of just an asshole. I mean, it sounded like he was not a fun guy to work with. So he's out. And we had two dueling stories that came out. We had Shams put his report from The Athletic, which was more information about O'Shea being out, kind of the culture that they're doing and what they're looking to do going forward, and some of the deals they're looking at. And then Woj came out today with his story, which seems to be from the other side, from O'Shea's spot here, kind of putting some onus on Dame and the pressure that he put on the front office, trying to leverage getting his own coach in there. There's this rumored deal that apparently Dame's people were pushing for them to trade for Ben Simmons and get rid of CJ McCollum. Shams says that was just normal trade negotiation between them. So we've had there's some competing narratives going on out of Portland right now. But what we know is that O'Shea's out. Dame apparently wants to stick around. He wants a 2-year extension that he can get added onto his deal this summer, which would somehow turn it I think his deal ends in 2025, so he would end in 2027 and be getting about 55 million or something in 2027, which, as we know, for aging point guards, that's a risky maneuver. But he wants the Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook type deal that those guys have and are getting paid, and John Wall and those kind of guys that have that security going forward. But he wants a team that can win around him still. I think that's pretty clear. But this team is going to have to, they're at a crossroads. They have to make a decision whether to rebuild or with Dame and get rid of basically, I would guess, everybody. Like, just retool this whole roster around Dame, get rid of CJ for what they can, get rid of these other young guys and everything, and try to build a new team around him, or rebuild and tear it all down with Dame, get rid of everybody and start anew in Portland. And we've had these Portland drama all summer. There was, rumors about the Dame trades and everything like that. So what was your impression seeing like the Dame the news over the weekend from Portland, and then the Dame news today, talking about the different trades and everything? What was the biggest thing that stuck out to you?
I mean, I think the biggest thing, and something that we kind of talked about before we hopped on here, is just almost like the disrespect that the Portland organization is not. I don't even know if it's been like so obvious, but like the fact that we've gotten to this point and like it seems outrageous that Dame's like asking for some of these things. Like, even if like half the things are true that they're pointing fingers at Damian Lillard for, like, so what? So what if this guy, like, you know how much he's given to this franchise? He's stuck around year after year. He's one of the best players, and one like a top 3 point guard year in, year out. And he's been this way since his rookie year. I mean, he's done so much for the franchise when they continue to give him so little year after year. I mean, dude, like, this roster right now, like Dame and CJ, great players, right? Dame obviously a lot better than CJ, but CJ solid. Norman Powell solid. Nurkic solid. So you have solid 4 guys. But after that, dude, I mean, Dennis Smith Jr. not doing it. Anthony Simons, I actually like him. He's a good young talent, but he's not moving the needle when your star point guard's over 30 years old. Cody Zeller, Larry Nance, Robert Covington. I mean, this is just the most average roster you can read down. And all this dude's been asking for is a good team around him. Like, the thing that stands out is just the blatant disrespect, I think, to Dame Lillard. And maybe, the organization doesn't see it that way, but that's just kind of how the NBA is now. Like, it started with LeBron, but a lot of star players, especially the guys who kind of make their team operate, which Dame Lillard does. He's, some nights essentially a one-man show. Like, make it happen for your star player, or you're gonna see him walk. If he wants the extension, I think you give it to him, but you also have to put the pieces around him, because that's what he's been asking for what seems like a long time now, and they have just flopped on trying to do it.
Mm-hmm. So the rumored trade that Dame apparently, I don't know, like, and we don't know where this came from. It's reported in both the Shams and Woj articles, so we don't know who did it. But the rumor was that Portland offered Philly Ben Simmons or CJ McCollum, one of the young guys, Simons or somebody else, and a first-round pick for Ben Simmons. And Philly, we know what Philly's demands are for Simmons. It's like 1,500 first-round picks and a player, which would be CJ McCollum. But apparently Dame, and this is according to the Shams article, he wants Simmons there. So the fact that Dame has been like, if that is true, and from the Dame side of things, like me and you talk about this all the time on here of where we're getting these stories from, and it's pretty clear for both Shams and Woj. You can kind of tell like who's giving them the information for both of their scoops. Like, it's pretty obvious. I think people are catching on to Schefter and stuff too. Like, you can tell where, like, who's some of these guys' sources are. It's clear, like, Shams has been reporting on the Dame stuff like all summer, all last year. He definitely has some kind of connection to Dame, whether it's him, his agent, whatever else. I think that Dame wanting to have Simmons come to Portland shows how much Dame really just wants to win in Portland. Like Ben Simmons is the most damaged goods superstar on the market we've had in a long time. And Lillard is like, nah, fuck it. Like, get that guy in here. We can go win. Like, he's exactly what we need on this team. I think that if anything, and Dame trying to get it, Dame trying to leverage the organization to get his coach in there, or the coach he wants in there, and all these different things. Like, Dame is just doing what he thinks will help you win a title, because you guys haven't done it for him yet. And now that it's said that he's willing to wait around to see who the next president of basketball operations is going to be to replace Olshey, kind of see how that power structure ends up falling. He's willing to wait out and see that. Teams are not going to offer him trades until he makes an official request. It was also in that Shams article, and that's fair, because no one's just going to mess around if he really doesn't want to go anywhere. He's still got, till 2025, and he wants that extension too. Like, I don't think he wants to go. I think that all the questions.
I mean, he's made that pretty clear.
Yeah,
for the
last, no one wanted to believe
years.
him.
And even the fact that he still does it now. I mean, dude, like, this guy is expressing his loyalty to the next level, and I just feel like they're still just not doing anything for him.
I think they got to get rid of CJ. I love CJ McCollum.
Me too.
But
it's clearly not working.
And he's been in the trade rumors for 5 years now. I mean,
also, if I'm Philly, I'm accepting that trade, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I think it depends who the young player is, maybe, but even if it is Simon, CJ, in a first, like, you're playing without Simmons right now. So I think anything, and that's a pretty good get. I mean, you add it's tough because you have guys like Danny Green and Seth Curry already on the roster, which essentially CJ McCollum, I think he's a little more talented than both those guys, but pretty similar players. So maybe there would be a second move, but I think you're getting a decent package back there for Ben Simmons, a guy who is refusing to play for your team, not really cooperating on, any level. I don't know. I think I don't know. I think you do that.
I'm with you 100%. I mean, we would have pulled the trigger on a bunch of Simmons trades at this point. Yeah. Like, with like that part, I don't understand. We know that what's his name there, Daryl Morey is going to hold out as long as he possibly can for that. There's not really. I mean, it'd be Simons and Powell and CJ. I think, like, Norm Powell. I don't know what else is very interesting on this roster. Like, Nasir Little is an interesting young guy. I don't know if he ever turns into anything. Like, they don't have a lot of pieces to offer unless it's a lot of picks. And I don't know. It depends how willing they are to do that with an aging point guard. It's just, I'm sure it's just going to be interesting to see who gets in there and kind of just discerning what they say right away about the whole situation, because this team has been at a crossroads for the last year and a half or so. I think they kind of fooled themselves when they made the Western Conference Finals a couple years ago.
Yeah,
to thinking that they were closer to elite than just taking advantage of a weaker West behind the Warriors and everything. And even that depleted Warriors team kind of handled them pretty easily too. And now the Warriors are having a renaissance. It's tough times in Portland, and Dame's just got to be frustrated seeing his peers be able, especially seeing Steph like do what he's doing this year, and with the roster they have, which isn't even, you could argue, is not a great roster without Clay around. Like, it's a lot of good young pieces and everything, but they're just a good team, and they have good supporting pieces around what Steph does well. I feel like Dame doesn't think he has that. He's got another ball dominant guard next to him every night. And from what we understand, I mean, they're great. They're friends. Like, they get along and everything. I'm sure it's no beef between those two, but it's hard to stay on the court with a guy that does literally the same things that you do every single night. Like, and you notice it too, like, Dame has a big night, CJ doesn't. CJ has a big night, Dame doesn't. Like, they're never really on at the same times. So I'm sure that this, as it keeps going, like, those frustrations just, they build up. Like, he sees everything. He clearly, like, we quote tweeted as one of the promotions for tonight's show was Dame talking right about the Woj piece that came out. Like, Dame pays attention to every little thing that we pay attention to online and everything. Like, he's very involved in it, so he hears all the noise and everything.
Yeah, I'm also hearing and seeing reports that Chauncey Billups is catching a lot of flack for how the team looks this year, which I don't think that's fair, because I mean, this dude was literally dropped into a team where they lose their GM. They're already, I mean, I went over how just completely average this roster is that he was given.
Mhm.
And now, there's all this weird stuff circling around Dame Lillard, who's your star point guard and probably was one of the few guys who Chauncey thought he could rely heavily on as far as just consistency and not having to worry about anything else. But now there are
Yeah.
all these worries, and what's going to fall into Chauncey's lap if Dame does get traded. And Chauncey may have taken this job because a guy like Dame is in this building. But now there's all sorts of reports that, players and coach conflicts happening. I have no idea if it's between Dame and Chauncey or if it's between some of the role players and Chauncey or if it's even true at all. But yeah, just a huge mess in Portland right now. It's kind of sad as far as, fans of Dame Lillard having to see this and not really getting what he wants.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't really know what the future looks like. If I had to guess, I would say that Dame stays in Portland. But I mean, if they can't bring someone in, like I think they would have to either give him the extension now or bring someone in mid-season, or I think he's going to demand a trade this offseason.
We'll see. Portland was the most interesting team last summer, and they're definitely going to be one of the most interesting teams this summer too. Let's get into tonight's matchup.
I just want to mention one other thing real quick. So speaking of the Indiana and now the Portland news about trading, I think I actually heard this for the first time on a broadcast the other night. So I looked it up. It's a NBA trade rule, and it's any free agent playing on a standard NBA contract, or if they are converted to one, may not be traded until 3 months after they sign or December 15th. So I think, in about a week now is when that date will hit. I think, especially with all the news flying around with Indiana and Portland, and then other teams who are looking to make trades, Ben Simmons, and then whatever all that Kyrie Irving drama that's maybe still going on in Brooklyn. I think, come a week, 2 weeks from now, I think we might see a lot of moves start happening early in this season for a couple of the teams that we talked about today, and then even some other teams. So something to look out for.
Yeah, agreed. I think that, however many free agents signed last year, everybody's available starting that date. So a lot more options for those trades that people have been talking about now. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a wild midseason because I think there's a lot of teams that can convince themselves they're good and have a chance this year, especially in not both conferences. The East doesn't look like it's really figured out yet what order they're going to be. In the West, we have our clear two. The Warriors and Suns are obviously outpacing everybody right now, but the rest of the middle of that West is there for the taking for whoever wants it. So let's get into tonight's matchup then. Two teams that are hanging lower in the playoff picture at the moment, but tweak a few things and with kind of play up to the expectations we have for both these teams. They should be higher. They should be top 5, top 4 in each conference. The Celtics and the Lakers back together tonight for the second match. It was so weird that the second game is like this early. Like no more Lakers Celtics the rest of the year. Usually it's like in January, February, we get like a nice Saturday night Lakers Celtics, but tonight, Tuesday night. So Donnie, let's start with your Celtics. What's the read on them coming into this matchup tonight? Is this the start of the West Coast swing, or I can't remember if
they played in Portland on Saturday night.
That's right.
So this is the second game of I believe it's a 5-game road trip.
Oh, they were in Utah too. That's right.
Yep, that's right. So this is the third game of the
third game. They're back in LA. They're back in Staples tomorrow night against the Clippers, and then finish off in Phoenix on ESPN Friday night. So give me what the Celtics have been looking like. It's been obviously an up and down start to the season. We've touched on them before, but right now 13-11, sitting in, I don't have the standings up because I just changed it. They think they're 6th or 7th in the East right now, 6th in the East right now. So what has been the read the last week or 2 weeks so on the Celtics?
So I think since that non-productive team meeting that Woj loved to talk about, and all the rest of the national media like to say that it was not productive. They've actually been great. They've been one of the best. They've been top 10 in defensive rating. I believe they're top 6 in net rating since then. The Celtics have played some great basketball, but like you said, they're still floating around 500. The record, I think some nights they play like a 500 team, but as of late, I think a lot of encouraging things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
They did start this road trip 500. They lost on a back-to-back. They lost to the Jazz the first night and then took care of Portland in Portland. And they put up 130 points in both those games. 145 against the Trailblazers, and then 130 something against Utah. I can't remember in the loss. So, at first it was neither side of the ball was really doing that well. Then the defense started to come around, but the shooting struggles were still happening for guys like Tatum. We haven't seen a whole lot of Jaylen Brown this season. He's missed just about half of the games, and now he's out again tonight. But when he does play, JB has looked great too. So a lot of ups and downs, but I think it's really encouraging what we've seen since that team meeting, and they've been able to turn a corner. And this is something that me and you both talked about. You kind of have to give this group a little time. I mean, brand new head coach.
Yeah.
A lot of new faces, a lot of lineups that need to be tweaked because, like I mentioned, Brown is missing time. Rob Williams has missed a good amount of time. And now, actually, with the Chicago Bulls having a rough free throw performance last night, the Celtics now lead the league in free throw percentage. First time in 30 years.
Wow.
So let's hope they can hold on to that. But, I mean, they're no doubt playing better basketball than they were a month ago. And I think it's really encouraging.
Definitely defensively too. Like I think that's the thing Ime has gotten them to buy in defensively, and they're starting to figure that side of the ball. And that's what you expect from the Celtics. We've expected it with Brad Stevens. We expected it when Ime coming in. They're going to be a force defensively. They're going to be tough to play against. And you look at the net rating in the East right now. They are right now 1, 2, 3, 4. They're 5th in net rating. They're tied right now at plus 2.4, or they're 0.1 behind the Hawks, who've had a great net rating all year. The record doesn't show it, and the Miami Heat right behind them. So that's the kind of category they're in the East, is with those teams. The Nets, Bulls, and Bucks obviously are way ahead of everybody else in that at the moment. But that's an encouraging sign for a team, especially 25 games in. They're in 24. This is game 25 tonight. That they're going to be able to keep pace and kind of stay above that little Mendoza line of the play-in. I think that they're going to hang right around where they're at, 5, 4, 5, 6. That's kind of where we thought they would be at the beginning of the year too. And I think that's where they belong. And you see the Wizards kind of trailing off here. They've lost their last 3, having some struggles. I think that they'll be able to climb right into that spot and be more in contention with the Heat, Hawks, Bucks, Bulls, whatever that mix is, 2 through 5, 2 through 6, that'll be there. So yeah, I've been encouraged. I was interested to hear how encouraged you felt. I think it's been a good run lately, and that's about what you can expect from this team right now. Still figuring their way out, and the rotations too, like figuring out the best lineups and everything. There's a lot of new faces on this team.
Richardson and Schroeder have both been unbelievable lately as far as scoring the basketball and just coming up in big moments. Richardson's defense really encouraging, and Tatum. I mean, he's started the year shooting poorly, and he has come on real strong, like especially in like this last 5-game stretch. I just saw today that Tatum is one of 4 players in the entire league averaging 25 plus points and 8 plus rebounds a game. And he is joined by Giannis, Luka, and Nikola Jokic. So pretty unbelievable 4 right there. Tatum's got to keep it up, especially when Brown is missing games like he has been. So, expect another big game from Tatum tonight. He's going to have to.
For sure. And he is matching up with the Los Angeles Lakers, the Celtics visiting the Lakers, and Lakerland. It's not good times in Lakerland still. Last night, LeBron, or yesterday, earlier today, whatever it was asked to give an assessment of their coaching, and he did not exactly he didn't come out against Frank Vogel, but he didn't defend him either. He didn't even really mention him. He kind of just said the players need to be better. We all need to be held more accountable, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But there's been a lot of talks about Vogel lately. That's is life with LeBron James as on your basketball team. Is if you're a head coach, you're probably going to get thrown into rumors when things are going. And right now he's on the hot seat. I don't know how much of it's his fault. What do you think about Vogel like right now? Do you think it's really him, or is this a Pelinka issue? Pelinka, aka LeBron shadow GM issue that the team that they've put together so far?
I think it's a perfect mix of everything. My thoughts on Frank Vogel haven't changed much since he got there. I literally, when people say Vogel, like my mind still goes Indiana Pacers at first because I just always forget he's their coach, because unless you have a coach, unless you're the coach of a LeBron team and you're, a guy who's, a great basketball mind, well respected, like Spoelstra was with the Miami Heat, or Tyronn Lue, who seemed to be just finding his face in the media a lot. I feel like you can be very forgotten if you coach a LeBron James led team, just because in years past you really haven't had to do all that much. But like you said, when they start to look bad as they have this season, that the finger pointing has to go somewhere. And LeBron's ducking when those fingers are pointed at him, and it is hitting whoever else. It doesn't matter who it is. Maybe LeBron shields his guy like AD. He shields Carmelo, so it's neither of those three's fault. Maybe a little bit of the blame gets to Westbrook because he's a newcomer, or some of the young guys, but it's definitely not LeBron. So Vogel, I think, he deserves some of the blame, dude. Look at the roster you have. You have Hall of Famers up and down it, and you guys are really, really underperforming to start the year. Like we have here, the Westbrook experiment, very up and down. I don't know. It's tough. I think Vogel for sure deserves some of the blame. Whether or not I think he's going to get fired, I think it's too early to tell, but I would not be shocked at all. If they keep this up, for another 10, 12 games, I think that's a very real possibility.
I just don't think I don't think he's a defensive coach, right? Like Vogel is in here that when they won the title, one of the best defensive teams in the league, but they had the personnel for it. This is not like a plus defending personnel type team. Like AD this year has looked like as bad as he's ever looked defensively. And I feel like he's kind of in the LeBron school of thought now, because he's been listening to him for 3 years, where he's kind of coasting on defense and saving his energy for offensively and doing that, especially because LeBron has been in and out of the lineup with, his ab injury. He was out missing the game with a suspension, missing a game with a false positive. Like everything that's gone wrong for LeBron has kind of gone wrong, but missing time and everything this year. And so we were like, okay, well, AD's good enough. He should be able to carry this load, especially with Russell Westbrook as his point guard. And it hasn't happened. I think that's more of an indictment on Anthony Davis than it is Frank Vogel, just from that specific point. But like you said, like, I don't think about, when you think about Vogel, you don't think of him like he obviously he's the coach of the Lakers right now, whatever, but it's not the first thought that comes to your head, because this is LeBron's team. Like, we know that this is his organization right now. He is basically doing everything for them. It doesn't matter who's in that head coaching spot. They're listening to what he's doing. And his best strength is using the roster and creating a great defensive scheme and great defensive team. I just don't think when you got Westbrook, Talen Horton-Tucker, I don't think's a great defender. DeAndre Jordan is nothing at center. Like, Dwight's okay, but he's not even as impactful as he was last year or the year before. Carmelo, obviously not a good defender.
Their rotation guys are worse than the Portland Trailblazers, who we talking about.
It's true.
They really are, dude. I would rather take the star players in the Lakers and surround them with the Trailblazers role players. They would be better.
This is why I'm like half joking when I say LeBron's going back to the Cavs next year, because he can opt out. And I'm like, yo, but like, would you rather play with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, or, Anthony Davis is awesome, but you got the rest of these guys on. Like, he'd have so much less to do, whatever. It's just, LeBron has to do a lot on this roster to make it work. And he's not at that point. We're talking about the net rating earlier with the Celtics. They have a great net rating right now for where they're at. The West, first of all, the West net ratings are all horrific. Like, all these teams, it's all red on ESPN's website, pretty much. We got the Warriors, who are at a historic level, plus 13. Suns plus 6.4, the Jazz plus 9.2. Those are all top 3 in the NBA right there. There's only 3 other teams above 0. The Grizzlies are 0.1, the Clippers plus 0.13 or 1.3, and the Lakers right underneath there in the 6th seed, minus 1.7 net rating on the year, along the likes of Dallas. They've got about the same net rating. The Spurs have a better net rating with them. The Raptors and Knicks both do. The Hornets do. The Sixers, pretty much every East team does. The Wizards. It's not clicking. They're 1-4 in the division, 6-8 in a not great Western Conference at all. Like they're not winning games they're supposed to. They're beating up on bad teams, like the bad teams pretty much, and that's keeping them afloat. I don't know where the fix is either. The problem is too, we haven't even seen this full roster. Like Kendrick Nunn was supposed to be huge as a guard, initiator, off the bench, whatever. He hasn't shown up yet. Whether you should count on Trevor Ariza or not, he hasn't played either. And I think he was going to be a huge part of their rotation, especially defensively this year. And we haven't seen him that much either. I don't know. I just don't see a fix. I think that I don't know if there's going to be a desperation, because obviously this team LeBron wants to be in the title conversation no matter what. I just don't see it with this roster. And we're talking about, earlier talking about Pacers trades and a Dame trade or anything else. But I don't know what they can even offer. Like they kind of need, like they could be that situation where it's like, I heard people all day today talking about Cavs 2017 and getting rid of half of that team and everything. It's like, okay, that's cool. That was also LeBron 5 years ago, though. And they had some shit to trade to do it. And the reason they did that was because they knew LeBron was leaving the next year and they're trying to win a title. So are the Lakers going to do that and admit defeat, basically, that they know LeBron is not around for the long term? Because I don't know if it's a given anymore with the way this roster's set up. You got more Russ. I mean, Anthony Davis is going to be better than most pieces in the league that you could go play with, like for anybody, like obviously. But the duo of LeBron and AD has clearly not been enough more often than not in the last 2 years. And they've been hurt on and off the last 2 years, whatever. But they win a title. It was all great. It's also the weirdest title ever. People are going to never, especially regular basketball fans, are not going to give LeBron credit for it.
LeBron says it was the hardest ever.
Yeah, it was the hardest after his 3 month break that he got to rest his whole body. It just was not natural. It was not a natural NBA time.
What happened? What do you think the chances are that Brody gets traded midseason?
Oh man, I don't think so either. But because I don't even know what they would get. Like I don't know what they could even do.
I'm trying to think
to OKC.
Who would make the most sense to trade, but like you're not trading Davis because we mentioned how abysmal their bigs are after him.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably not trading Russ because no one's really taking on the contract. Plus, I mean, he hasn't had the best of luck, with the last couple of teams, and he's not having a particularly great season this year. Not that he's playing poorly, but it's just like, I don't know. The Lakers are so just like bland right now. So no one's really jumping off the page, and they don't have – I mean, I've bragged about their roster for them and how many Hall of Famers they have, but that doesn't mean they have good trade assets, like you said.
Yeah.
So they are in a really tough spot if they continue to look this bad.
Yeah, but the answer is basically play better, and they just haven't done that since then.
That's the only thing they can do. But tonight – What do you like in the lines? Lakers -4 over under 219. No Jaylen Brown for the Celtics, but they should have a complete roster other than that. LeBron James back in the lineup for the Lakers after that weird COVID mishap. What do you think? You think they even the season series, or is Boston sweeping?
I'm going Celtics +4, but I think the Lakers will win a close game. I don't trust the Lakers blowing out a lot of good teams at all this year. So I'll just take the home team just because I think this is a pretty even matchup without Jaylen Brown. If Jaylen Brown was playing, I wouldn't even hesitate. I'd take the Celtics money line. But without Brown, whatever, I'll take the points. lean towards the Lakers winning just because they're home, but would not be shocked at all with a Celtics win. And honestly, with a Celtics big win, with the way with the way LeBron was out in the media yesterday, like who knows what this locker room's going to be like. I could see the Lakers coming out flat tonight. Like that's what I'm most worried about. Really interested to see how they respond to that kind of press conference and stuff, because LeBron does these things all, like he always does these press conferences, always calls his team out. It's pretty much once a year, once every other year, depending on how the team's playing. And we've seen teams respond differently, even the same team respond differently year to year. So are you? Oh,
Am I back?
I think I'm back here.
Okay.
We're both back. We're running out. This is God telling us to wrap it up, I think.
Yeah, I'll go over what I got for tonight, and then we'll be out of here. But yeah, I'm taking the away team. No surprise there. I just think, the Celtics, I was there in person when the Celtics handled biz in the first game of this season series. They didn't have Jaylen Brown that night. They didn't have Robert Williams either. Rob will be back in the lineup. They handled their business kind of easily. Obviously, it came off a huge night from Jason Tatum. So, like I mentioned, he's playing great lately. I think he's going to need to have another big night if they want to win again. But I don't know, dude. The Lakers are playing some sketchy basketball right now. As you mentioned, LeBron, kind of up to his old tricks with the media, just giving out these weird statements. You never know how that makes teammates feel, especially he has a lot of new teammates this year who don't really have chemistry built up with him. So, yeah, I like the Celtics +4. I kind of like the Celtics winning outright also. It's going to be an interesting game, but I don't know. I don't really believe in this Lakers team outside of like their core 4 guys, and even those guys are looking sketchy right now.
I wouldn't believe in them either. I'm with you. And I used to be a guy that would bet on the Lakers a couple years ago almost every damn game just because I thought the Lakers could beat most teams. Those days are long gone. I'm with you wholeheartedly there. All right, well that'll do it today. We've got a fun game tonight. Celtics Lakers at 10 o'clock tonight, 7:30. About it's travel to schedule. But that'll do it for Happy Hour Hoops here. The podcast that is proof that even after a Monday night football game, Bills and Patriots fans can come together as one and talk about basketball. Dunny, I think that we're a good representation of how to act after a football game. We've done nice. I'm gone again. Bills fans are arguing with each other, and as to kick us out of here, I'll just wrap it up. So thank you. Look below, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube. You can find us everywhere. Give us 5 stars. Follow us at Happy Hour Hoops 1. For Donovan Holden, this is Jake Micah. Thank you for joining us, Happy Hour Hoops. We'll see